My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make these moments of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. We spend a lot of time contemplating Jesus. Sometimes, as well, we need to contemplate those around him. They are amazing figures. They help us to see the power of grace. They help us to see the face of holiness. And they help us to see how a person can relate to God. Take John the Baptist, for example. He appears in today's Gospel, and there we find him dressed in camel's hair and eating locusts. He seems wild, but wild doesn't cut it. He's not a maniac wild man, but a man who had nothing other than God in his life. And he had a particular way of making that very, very real, tangible, a sign for those who saw him. He had a particular way of living that because he had a particular mission to fulfill. That mission was more important than his particular way of living, and, in my opinion, more interesting as well. When we look at St. John the Baptist, we see a man singularly given to his task. He is a preface of what is to come. Even more, he's a preface of the one who is to come. Just imagine his life. They're preaching, baptizing, but all in anticipation. He knows that his baptism is a mere reflection of the baptism to come. And he's full of longing. His whole life has been for the one who is to come, anticipating him. He has a task to fulfill, but he longs to see its fulfillment. Have you ever thought, what would he talk about with his disciples? What would he dream about as he lay in bed at night? Would he be constantly on the lookout for the one, the Messiah? As he saw those chains of people coming to him, as he saw the crowds walking past him, as he looked out at all the people around him, would he constantly be on the lookout for the one? His was a life given, completely given, but always longing, awaiting, anticipating. So we can well understand his desperation to know, as we encounter it in today's Gospel. John, summoning two of his disciples, sent them to the Lord to ask, "Are you the one who is to come, or must we wait for someone else?" When the men reached Jesus, they said, "John the Baptist has sent us to ask you, are you the one who is to come, or have we to wait for someone else?" It was just then that he cured many people of diseases and afflictions and of evil spirits, and gave the gift of sight to many who were blind. Then he gave the messengers their answer, "Go back and tell John what you have seen and heard. The blind see again, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised to life. The good news is proclaimed to the poor, and happy is the man who does not lose faith in me." What joy did John the Baptist feel on hearing this from his disciples when they came back? Finally, he is here. His moment has arrived, and he will increase and fulfill everything required to free humanity from the slavery of sin. Well, Jesus, I look at John the Baptist looking for you, and I think of myself and of all the people around me in these times. We also are looking for something. So many people don't realize it. So many people don't even want to acknowledge it. but we are all longing for something. We are all longing for you. And of course, the closer we come to you, we realize that our true satisfaction lies in you. In reality, Lord, just like John the Baptist, you need to be very directly at the center of our lives so that we can anticipate you with the same fervor and enthusiasm that he did. All the better if we are longing for you, aching to meet you, wishing that you would re-enter this world with an outpouring of your grace. Sometimes it seems like that anticipation, that longing, is almost painful. Yet here, during Advent, we live a joyful anticipation. We're looking forward to a joy that is yet to come, but that is not yet. And as we look forward to this, we learn to be happy not having, right now, the satisfaction we're longing for, because we know that in time it will come. That's something we're not very good at all. But, of course, sometimes waiting for something makes it all the more special. I remember talking to a fellow once who went on a trip to the Australian outback. There he was on a journey of several weeks, and he had a guide, an old, wiry fellow with deep wrinkles and leathery skin. The kind of guy who seemed to have spent more time in the bush than in a house. He knew how to read the land. He knew how to see it, to see what was happening, the kind of thing that happens with people who spend a long time with nature. This fellow tells me that one day they had a particularly long journey. It was hot and humid. Not so much dusty, just humid, oppressively humid. They had a long and agonizing stretch after lunch. One of those walks that seemed to never end. There was, of course, no end in sight because only the guide knew where the end would be. And this fellow found himself longing and aching for rest. But even more than that, the hunger. He was burning for food. Finally, already approaching the night, they stopped. And there, on the campfire, the guide cooked damper. Now, damper, for those who aren't accustomed to Australian cuisine, is just bush food. It's basically flour and water cooked on a campfire with a stick. You probably couldn't find a food more simple and more boring than that. But according to this fellow, nothing had ever tasted better than that damper. Years and years later, he related this story still savoring the flavor of that meal. But of course, he wasn't savoring so much the flavor as the experience. Because, of course, sometimes experience needs a bit of hardship or difficulty to make it even better. Now, a meal of flour and water isn't all that impressive, but think about a different one, like children waiting for their dad to get back from a trip. You can't keep down their enthusiasm, the excitement. In fact, kids like that generally can't stop talking about it for weeks. And you see the joy in their face. And there they are, reminding you all the time that just one more week and Dad's going to be home. Because you can't help but smile. Clearly, it must be as significant in my life as it is in theirs, for them to remind me about it so much. But they're aching and longing to be reunited with the one who means so much to them. And that is Advent for us. The anticipation makes it all the better. Jesus, that's how I'd like to long for you. That's especially how I'd like to learn to long for you in Advent. It's such a beautiful time of the liturgical year. We often think that Christmas is a time of joy, and therefore Advent is a time of suffering, but I don't think it is. It's joyful anticipation. Here we are, awaiting your birth, your entry into the world. How many parents have we seen awaiting a baby? And the joy that they have as they anticipate that baby is palpable, positively contagious. So how am I not going to wait for you, for your birth, with joy and anticipation? I think the thing is that we need to learn from John the Baptist. Not so much that we need to learn the stuff about camel's hair and locusts, but rather that we need to learn about directing our life towards you. Because surely the more we live with you as our focus, the more we will anticipate you with joy. And we look at the Virgin Mary, at Saint Joseph, at the wise men from the East, all of them anticipating you, each in their own way. And of course, John the Baptist, awaiting you after your birth, awaiting your revelation to the world. Help us to learn from them and to put you so much at the center of our lives this Advent that this Christmas will be a time of real rejoicing. Our Mother Mary, help us to have your Son Jesus in the middle of all our hopes and desires. Help us to long for him this Advent by putting him at the center of our prayer. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations which you have communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask your assistance in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.